According to the National Fire Protection Association, there are far fewer house fires today than there were 40 years ago. But despite this great achievement, other factors have caused the house fires that do happen to become arguably more dangerous than they used to be. Which begs the question, what are the firefighters doing to adapt to these threats? And also, what does any of this have to do with Christianity? I'm Matthew Murphy, and this is Herald from the North. No one in their right mind would want to spend all of their time thinking about the potentially dangerous things that could happen at any moment. The reason we purchase security systems and insurance and things of the like is so that we can rest easy knowing that should a hazardous situation occur, that we'll have the tools to either manage the situation or to prevent it from happening altogether. But for these countermeasures to exist in the first place, at least some people have to be willing to put their time and effort into addressing the problem. This is the mindset that has been applied to the problem of house fires over the years. The National Fire Protection Association states that the annual rate of house fires in the United States dropped over 50% between 1980 and 2021. This is partially because less people own things like fireplaces and gas stoves, but the rest can be credited to the people who recognized the immense threat that house fires posed and put a slew of money and resources into solving the issue. People worked to upgrade firefighting tactics and to hire and train more people to improve response time, but most importantly, they helped to develop preventative technology so that they could stop the fires before they even got started. Not only did this result in a massive drop in the number of house fires, it also meant that firefighters were able to widen their scope of care to medical emergencies, which allowed them to save even more lives. This has become especially important because houses and furniture are far less durable than they used to be. First Coast News reported on findings by the Fire Safety Research Institute and said, quote, "Modern homes burn 8 times faster than 50 years ago and produce 200 times more smoke. And families 30 years ago had 17 minutes to escape before the entire house was engulfed in flames. Now it's down to 4, end quote. While the supplies that builders use to construct houses holds up just fine under normal circumstances, as soon as it's put under the stress of fire, it rapidly loses its structural integrity. With houses having such weak foundational materials, it's made preventing fires that much more critical. I described all of this to help demonstrate 2 things. Firstly, the power of taking preventative action, and secondly, the importance of being proactive when problems do occur. Most everyone would agree that the steps that have been taken to prevent house fires are a net positive for society. But when it comes to churches, many seem to be unwilling to follow suit when they're trying to accomplish their mission. The church is often referred to as, quote, a hospital for the sinner. And this title fits well enough, with Christ being the great physician helping to heal the world of its sin, and the church serving as the place where people are introduced to him. And while it's good and necessary that people have a place that they can come to recover from their spiritual injuries, churches don't often do much to address the things that are causing these injuries in the first place. Those in charge of fire safety began to study the situations and actions that led to fires being started so that they could prevent people from ever having to go to the hospital. The logical conclusion for the churches would be to follow suit and to try to identify what in the world is hurting people and to prevent it from happening. And we certainly wouldn't have to look far. Our culture is brimming with ideas and ideologies that leave people spiritually burned. People are being taught to hate marriage and family in favor of sexual freedom. Babies are being killed in the womb, and kids are being mutilated and castrated by people calling it healthcare, and so on. To say that these actions are evil is an understatement, and churches should be working to expose and dissuade the people who support these actions so that they don't destroy any more lives. But many churches are staying silent. As far as they're concerned, they don't want to engage with anything that might put them in danger or cause tension. They try to excuse themselves from speaking out by saying that they stay out of politics or that they just spread love. But all the while, people are going about their lives getting scorched by destructive ideas, and even convincing some churches to stop being hospitals altogether and to participate in the madness. Far too many churches are content to watch the world spiritually burn people around them, so long as afterwards those people come through the church doors so that they can keep the lights on. This is not a rational response to what's going on, and in no other context do people act this way. This is like if I saw fire coming towards you and I still had time to warn you about it before it got to you, but instead refused to do anything about it until after you got torched. Anyone who saw it would be appalled by my actions and say that I should have helped you before it burned you. And they certainly wouldn't assume that I cared about you. In fact, they would come to the opposite conclusion, that I must have some deep-seated hatred for you to allow you to endure such agony. But so often, when churches see things that happen in the culture that they know to be evil and wrong, they refuse to say anything about it because they're worried about offending people and driving people away. Unfortunately for them, this non confrontational approach to responding to cultural issues has the opposite effect. The church is tasked with proclaiming truth and morality to the world. But when churches don't defend their beliefs in the face of cultural pressure, people who take their faith seriously are bored and disgusted by their lack of conviction and leave. And rightly so. They want a church that will follow the firefighters' example and to work to combat the spiritual fires in the world. They want churches that apply law and gospel faithfully in every situation, who logically and boldly dispute false claims that are made by secular culture and uphold the truth of Scripture. They want churches who will tend to the wounds of the spiritually broken and fight the ideas and lifestyles that made them that way. Because just like the houses that are built nowadays, our current culture doesn't provide good materials with which to build a worldview. The ideas that people are fed through social media and public schools are flimsy and cheap compared to the sturdy and substantial wisdom that's found in Scripture. And while the materials seemingly hold up under normal circumstances, they fail to stand when people inevitably do face challenges and hardship, leaving them depressed and unsure where to go. If we really care about people's spiritual well-being, we need to provide them with real insights and truth before the house collapses. And the wildest part of all of this is that if someone agrees with everything that I've been saying and tries to speak out against it, they're called unchristian. And while it's natural for non-Christians to level this accusation, there's a large swath of self-professed Christians who would agree with them. They say that Christians shouldn't respond so forcefully and that Jesus only responded gently and nicely, both of which are simply bogus. There are countless biblical examples of people confronting the evil that they encountered. In Romans 1, when Paul is talking about those who have turned away from God, he describes them with a litany of terms that many Christians would not approve of if used today. In 1 Peter 4, Peter decries the actions of the Gentiles and lists off their, quote, debauchery. And way back in the Old Testament, Elijah famously mocked the prophets of Baal when they were trying to prove that Baal was the superior god. But if Christians today use mockery to denounce evil and falsehood, they're chastised and ridiculed both by strangers and peers alike. Even Jesus spent a lot of his ministry calling people out on their sinfulness and false teaching, like the times that he called the Pharisees fools and broods of vipers, or when he told several cities that on Judgment Day it'll be better for those in Sodom than it is for them because of their sin. And everybody's familiar with the account of Christ clearing out the temple, but what many people don't realize is that the different details provided between the Synoptic Gospels and the book of John seem to show that Christ did this on two separate occasions. The Bible consistently shows that there are times that we must speak forcefully against sinfulness and those perpetuating it. That's not to say it's all times, but there are times nonetheless. And to top it all off, I reject the premise that it isn't loving. Scripture says that truth will set you free and that we shouldn't be ashamed of the gospel. Speaking out against sin and evil in the world isn't the problem. Staying silent while people are burned by sin is. If the church can serve as a hospital, could it not also serve as a fire station? If it helps heal the wounds of the sinner, shouldn't it also fight to douse the flames of the evil that's burning them alive? If sin is truly destructive to body and soul, then Christians should do everything in their power to bring truth to combat the evil. Our culture is on fire, and it's not enough for churches to simply watch people come limping in and feel good about themselves because they feel needed. Churches have to stand up and decry the destructive ideologies that have gripped a hold of our culture and destroyed people's lives. A church that truly loves the people it claims to care for has to stand in the face of evil as Christ calls them to do. And if it doesn't, can it even really be called the church at all? That's all I have for today. Thanks for listening, and until next time, farewell. Thanks for listening. Remember to use the links in the description to follow me on social media and wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode.